I hope I don't come off as some sort of. I don't know all the nerd news all the
Hey,
time.
no, that's totally fine. See, you got to remember that in geek cultures and circles, honesty is more important. They're smart enough. You got to remember, most geeks are above average intelligence, and they're smart enough to sniff out bullshit.
Yeah, yeah,
So that's the one thing I always. It's like, dude, just don't lie. You know,
yeah,
because it's
yeah.
almost insulting. Like,
Right. 'Cause you're like, dude, it's like, yeah, I don't know. It was funny last night. I was thinking about it. Like, you have those moments where you realize, like, oh man, I'm a nerd.
hmm
I don't know. And
I'm a hardcore nerd. It's all right.
well, I don't know. If you want to start the stream now, it's fine. I mean, I can
Hey,
tell
we're,
you
we're actually
anecdote.
we're started right now.
Oh, okay, cool.
We're
Yeah, all right.
going.
But I'll tell you my nerd anecdote.
All right.
But
So
we
hold
were.
on, hold on. Before you tell your nerd anecdote, let's just do like an official kind of startup.
Oh, okay.
All right. So I'm not gonna play the music or anything, but I'm gonna go to a splash page somewhere. Wait, what the fuck? Where'd my splash page go? Give me 1 second. Pictures. I'll just go to some random splash page. There we go. All right, cool. I'm putting up a Cerebus the Aardvark splash, and then I'll just kind of do a come in intro type thing.
Okay.
All right. All right, there we go. Hello, how are you today?
I'm fine. How are you?
No, I just thought to think of what was the stupidest thing I could have said at that moment. Um, so a little bit of an intro. This is a project that we still don't quite have a name for. Um, if
I
we
really like yo graphic raps.
that is a possibility. We'll have to talk to our third person Tim, who if you're watching on the stream, you can see this giant black spot, which is where his camera is supposed to exist, but I don't know what happened to him. Don't know what happened. Oh well. We'll have to deal with him at a later date. So this project. It's a comic books podcast. I'm Will. As you can see by my title, I've done other podcasts before under the tag TheAmazombie, which is from my video gaming kind of background. So that's where if you know anything about that, that's me. And then our friend here,
I'm
this
Kirbytron.
Kirbytron, this beautiful young woman.
Aw, thanks. Shucks.
Oh shucks, oh shucks, you guys, stop it. Um, so the purpose of and then our black spot is Tim. In fact, you know what? Let's have a little fun here. Let me throw up a picture of what I think Tim should look like since he's not here to actually show himself. Do I have where's my Google Drive? There we go.
Wait, link. Where's? I need a link to the thing to
Okay,
get.
hold on. I'll throw it up in a minute. Hold on.
Okay.
Come on, why didn't this work? There we go. Okay, hold on. There we go. All right, and you need a link.
Yeah.
All right, hold on. Let me pull up the link myself, and then I'll just copy it. There you go. Oops, I just sent that to I just sent that to the wrong person. Where are you? There you are. There you go. All right. I think we're all set now. So, in general, what this is just kind of a comics project that we're doing. Not so much talking about like overall news, not so much talking about reviews and critiques, as much as talking about books, some old, some new, that I just heard myself. You mute that.
Yeah.
Mute the
I'm
stream.
sorry. I muted.
Haven't you ever listened to radio? You know, that's like the first thing. Turn off the radio. No, I'm just kidding. Just giving you shit. That's all.
Cool.
So the main idea is just to kind of talk about the story as a whole, pick a book, a writer, an artist, creator, whatever it may be. Pick a story as a whole. Talk about it in terms of us. Talk about it in terms of what it means to us. Not, like I said, not so much like a critique or review, but more of an in-depth look at the stories. So this week's selection is going to be, there you go, Black Hole by Charles Burns. Now, this came out in serialized form over a series. You know what? Before we talk about that, let's before we go more into that, there's a little bit of news that we want to kind of mention.
Oh yeah.
So
the DC thing, right?
Yeah. So let me. I've been trying to update Amber on this as well while we're doing this. So.
Yeah, I'm not nerd news savvy. So.
That's totally all right. I'm all nerd news. Like, that's all I do. Like, there's a lot of things I'm not savvy at, but nerd news I got. So, all right. So, comics writer and author Chris Robertson, who was a short story sci-fi writer and then started writing comics for DC, he made a very public series of tweets and interviews in the past 2 weeks, where he basically told DC to fuck off. He didn't want to work for him because they were a horrible company, then they screwed over their creators. And that was basically it, and expressing his extreme happiness with, like, a weight lifted off his shoulders, knowing that he wasn't working for the man, essentially, right? Like, this is kind of...
I can understand that.
Exactly, right? That's totally cool. So... most people, there's a lot of people that are all for it. In fact, I don't know if you know who Oliver Simonson is, but he's a guy who works with Dave Sim and does indie comics projects with him. And when I posted this story on our Facebook group, Oliver got so excited and wrote this big post response to it, and was just like, oh my, because Dave Sim is the indie comics guy. He's the guy who fought for indie comics for so long and made indie comics viable. So the guys that work with him are just like, oh my god, this is the greatest thing, to actually have a popular writer speak out against DC. Now, Amber was asking me, as we were talking about it a little before we started the cast, about what is the problem with DC and their creators. So, a little bit of an overview. DC and Marvel both are not necessarily very well known for taking care of their creators. They use their creators as almost like machines to create properties that they can own, right? I know, right? See, and I mentioned this, Tim and I talked about this a while back also, about how you would think that if you have this source that creates everything you do and are, that you would go out of your way to take care of them. You would think that, right?
Yeah.
That turns out not to be the case most of the time, at least when dealing with Marvel and DC, the big two, as they're called. So he cited a reason for leaving as the Before Watchmen series, which is coming out here, I think, next month or the month after, the start of them, against Alan Moore's wishes, who it's Alan Moore's property, essentially, even though it's legally DC's. And how DC and Alan Moore have a very long and sordid history of DC going out of their way to find ways to kind of screw Alan Moore over, to the point where Alan Moore has said that that's why he no longer will work for the big two companies.
I mean, and how can you, like, screw a guy like Alan Moore over, you know? Isn't he, like, completely docile and just, like, hides away in his London apartment or something? You know?
See, I don't know. You know, he actually doesn't hide away. He makes some very public statements. But he does kind of, he kind of lives, I don't know. See, I'm kind of torn about Alan Moore as a whole, just because he is, while the most interesting and creative comic book writer of, you know, the past, him along with Dave Sim, you know, the two most creative forces in comic books for the last 30 years, right? He's also one of the biggest pretentious douchebags I've ever, like, heard speak.
Yeah, but man, you need those pretentious douchebags.
I know, right? Like,
yeah, I mean, that's the artist, right?
Yeah, yeah. I think he kind of fills that role very well. But So the famous thing is the original Watchmen contract. The original Watchmen contract they basically told Alan Moore, hey, don't worry, we're going to make this comic book, and the thing is, we'll do it, it'll sell, it'll be a thing, and then once it goes out of print, the rights will be turned over back to you and Dave Gibbons, the co-creator. So they were like, oh, that's great. Unfortunately, what happened was, it wasn't just a thing. It was a huge thing, right? It was the biggest event in comic books to date.
Really?
Yeah, I mean, the most influential series yet written, essentially, right? And so what's basically happened is it has never gone out of print, and therefore DC is holding on to the rights like they hold on to their dicks, right? Like... Nice. They're the kind that I think they would throw money away to keep it in print even if it wasn't selling, just to hold on to the property rights. Okay. So that's kind of just the big one, but there's a series of this. So anyway, they're making the Before Watchmen series here soon, even though Alan Moore said, hey, don't do that, there's no point. Why are you doing that? And all comic fans and creators are generally also saying, what the fuck are you doing? Like, why? What's the point of this? Other than just
messing around with something that doesn't need to be
Exactly. It's already a closed system. It already has a beginning, middle, and end that are practically perfect.
They
Why
want to just sell more?
Exactly.
Because there's probably just been I don't know this for sure, but there's probably been a huge influx since the movie.
Exactly. Oh, and I mean, the movie was gigantic. It was in some ways a flop, but it's still a fabulous movie too. Have you watched it?
Oh yeah, I fucking loved it. I mean, I was kind of torn about the way it ended because because it ends it's so poetic how it ends in the book, and then the way it ends in the movie is just kind of, for me, it was kind of disenchanting. I wanted it to follow. I mean, he did such a great job. The director, he did such a great job in following everything, like almost frame for fucking frame.
Yeah.
Then why ruin the end?
So I'm on one level I agree with that on that purist level. On the other level, the squid alien thing in the book is one of the most contested parts of the entire book. People are like, what the fuck is this?
Right.
It doesn't. So he said, you know what? Let's just make it an atom bomb, essentially. Let's just make it something more modern, and then they'll take out the references to the squid generally throughout that were in the book, and then it doesn't quite kind of build up to that. And I think that the story,
but I think that
exists perfectly fine without it. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I agree. I can agree with that. But there was something, and I can't remember exactly what it was, and I kind of want to grab my Watchmen real quick. I don't know. But with Rochard's character, there was something different that I hated. I just hated it because I love him. What was it?
Now I don't remember.
All right. The way he ended.
Heck, I don't.
So great.
I don't even. I don't. I haven't reread the book since I've watched the movie, so I keep just seeing the movie. Death of. You're talking about Rorschach, right?
Yeah.
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 I don't remember the difference from the book now. Now you got me wondering too. And now I'm looking over at my hardcover over there and like, fuck, I should go get it. But anyway, while you look for that, I'm just going to kind of continue going over this. So what DC then came out, Jim Lee, the co-publisher of DC, who used to be quite a famous artist and is now just kind of a tool. He came out and said, first they came out and said, that last contracted book that Chris was doing for us, yeah, he's not going to do that anymore. He obviously doesn't want to work for us anymore, so fuck it, get rid of him. The problem, so they cited these reasons of him, expressing his disgust with DC for canceling his contract. the problem is that he's expressed his disgust multiple times in the past for the way DC does things, and they never canceled his contracts before. So of course they're more just doing it out of revenge now. And then Jim Lee comes forward and says, that's fine if he doesn't like us, but I wish you would have talked to me first. And of course Chris Robertson said, what the fuck would that have done? It wouldn't have changed anything. You would not have been able to convince me that to not hate your company, and all it would have done was give you forewarning and an easier job to get your PR people in line. That's kind of essentially it. So since that time, Chris has been amazed. Most of the community has been amazed at the amount of support that has come out for him, and even though he's kind of a low-level creator, right? He's kind of a low-level writer. He's not a major name in the business. He's just kind of he's a guy that's there. And he does some popular stuff, some semi-popular stuff. But people, like I said, they're coming out from all sorts supporting him to show the support for creators' rights, to the point where some creators it's inspiring them. They're saying this may be the start of a new revolution, like Image made in '92 when they first started. They don't know. I mean, we're going to have to see what comes from it, but that's kind of the big news from the last couple weeks.
He's kind of like the underdog, standing up for everybody, and
exactly. He's become this symbol for the creator, standing up against the man, right? It's
so comic book.
Well, and so did you see the link I sent you here? I'm gonna have to throw this up on the stream. To add screen region. Let's add this browser. So look at this picture of Chris Robertson that they took for this interview. And it's got him, pulling off his shirt and having like a Superman-style logo under there.
Oh, yeah. Oh, hold on. One second.
No problem.
Do you mind just watching for a second?
No.
Okay, thanks. My wonderful sitter and best friend who went and took my kid out came back.
Yes,
Anyways,
indeed. Hello.
We're on a blog feed right now, so
I
you have
see
to
that.
pardon us.
And
Yeah.
you're reading him comic books?
Well-
This is what you guys do?
This is the secret life of a geek. We Skype each other and read comic books.
This sounds a lot like what I do, but I don't get a degree for it. I'm just, you guys go ahead.
Okay.
It's all
She
good.
thinks I'm doing homework.
That's okay. It happens to us all. So anyway, what? What is your kind of thoughts in general? Kind of getting the overview of this.
Well, I mean, I think it's awesome that he stood up. I mean, I love this Superman shot right here. He looks great. Yeah, I mean, I'm kind of curious, like, I mean, is Marvel a lot like DC in this aspect? I mean, do they screw their creators over too?
Yes, but they're generally not considered as bad. And it's not just this. I didn't even go into one of the other aspects of this, is the way that they're treating. DC is famous for their shitty contract that they gave Schuster and what's his name? The guy who created Superman. The guys who created Superman, right?
Why can't I think of that?
I feel stupid now, but and how
Is that what this lawsuit's about?
There is a lawsuit, yes.
Toberoff, right?
Yes. I think so. I think that's the one. But yeah, let me see. Yeah, Simon and Schuster. There we go. That's Siegel and Schuster. There we go. I said okay. Simon. Siegel and Schuster. Yes, that's that lawsuit. And how he brought up the points, and Marvel is on the same boat on this front of these old creators' estates are coming back, basically suing, looking for their piece of the pie, right? And DC and Marvel are both being very aggressive to not give them anything at all. And that's where a lot of the animosity also comes from. It's like, hey, these guys, Siegel and Schuster basically made DC. I mean, their ideas, their property, their creations made DC. DC is basically couldn't have really been without them.
And did they create Batman too?
No, Batman was a Kane.
Can't remember.
Yeah, Kane. What's his name? Bob Kane.
Okay.
But
I thought DC was named after the Detective comic.
it was. But Detective Comics was before Batman.
Oh, okay.
Batman's first appearance was Detective Comics 27, in fact, and yeah, DC and Superman. Superman was, of course, Action Comics #1, and Detective Comics and Action Comics kind of came around the same time, and then Batman came a little bit later.
And then the two kind of merge.
Oh yeah, they eventually made the whole universe, but
okay, so they merged and became DC, and then Marvel came later.
yeah, so they didn't so much merge as much as it was they were already under the same tag, the same publishing company.
Okay.
But Marvel was around at the same time. Excuse me, under a slightly different name, but they weren't really what they were today until a little bit later.
Right.
They did have Captain America and whatnot in that golden age, and they had like Namor, and they had the Flaming Torch and whatnot, the Human Torch, excuse me. But then it really wasn't. Marvel really got huge in the '60s with the Silver Age comics. They were it was the Spider-Man, the Iron Man, the Fantastic Four, the X-Men, blah blah blah.
Right. Yeah.
So that's kind of basically just an overview about this story that I don't know, I just find it intriguing, and I can't help but read anything that comes out about this right now. So that's just, I wanted to kind of get some people's point of view, get some, let some people who may not have heard of this in on the secret.
I'm gonna follow this, yeah, and see. I'm very interested. I'm a huge fan of Alan Moore.
Uh-huh.
I knew he was kind of like anti-big business, but he's still part of DC. But I had no idea that they screwed him over so much.
Yeah, they and it's one of those things where DC says their argument is, well, he signed the contract, but on the other level, is a shitty contract still a shitty contract. It doesn't matter if you signed it or not. It's still garbage, right? Like,
yeah.
And I don't know. It seems kind of like one of those things where young creative people, they want to go out of their way to take advantage of them early because they know the young creative people need the money, essentially, right? Like,
right.
They're going to take
this guy standing up for himself and for everybody else is kind of like, that's inspiring for independent, creative, young comic book writers and illustrators to not always feel like they have to follow DC, to go out on their own, because this is, it's kind of essentially like making DC become like the big, ugly, evil empire.
Well, they already were. I mean, and it's just good to hear someone speaking up, though, about it. Instead of just accepting it for the fate that it is. And that's something that, of course, like I mentioned before, Dave Sim fought horribly for throughout the 80s. He fought tooth and nail for. The difference between someone like a Dave Sim and someone like a Chris Robertson is Dave Sim is one of the most outstanding creative forces in the comic book industry for the last 30 years. And Chris Robertson's just kind of a comic book writer.
Guy.
He's not he doesn't necessarily, he hasn't shown much in the way of an ability to pull this out, to do everything 100% on his own and make something that is both amazingly creative and outstanding and can make money, so that's kind of the difference there. But it is good to hear. It is cool, especially since Dave Sim's been kind of shoved over into the trash bin of history a lot of because of some of his very public beliefs and statements. So
this is good. It's drawing attention to it, and for people like me who aren't as savvy as you, I had no idea DC was as bad as they are, and now I'm being educated.
Well, there we go. So let's move on and let's get on with our main topic for today, which is, as we mentioned, Black Hole by Charles Burns. There's yours. Here's mine. There we go. I also have. Let me see. Where is it? Right here? Nope. There we go. There we go. I'll throw that up on the splash screen. So, Black Hole came out first as a serialized kind of, I think it was like a 7 or 8 part series, something like that. That was then collected in 2008, I think is when this book came out.
Oh, wow.
And it was then collected later into this one graphic novel, which then ended up winning, Eisner Awards and Harvey Awards and everything, and being one of the
2005.
2005. Oh, okay. And being one of the top graphic novels of a long time. Charles Burns, who is a fabulous and outstanding cartoonist, known for his very, as you can see by the cover, his very dark lines, is very, very, very stylistic. It's hard not to see Charles Burns and not know that it's not him,
Oh, yeah.
Very, very, it's kind of hard to see there on the camera, but very distinct style. So, let's give a little brief overview of the story as a whole. The takes place in the 70s. It reminds me a lot of when I think of Black Hole, what it reminds me of is Dazed and Confused. That same era,
okay.
right? Like the same
Yeah.
kind of people for the most part, as what
Yeah.
a little bit different. Where Dazed and Confused has a very kind of LA mentality. Black Hole is, of course, set in Seattle, and it has a very Seattle mentality. That's really the only difference, but it's a lot of the same people and things. The story follows a group of these high school people and some other people of different ages, but for the most part, this high school people going through, basically going through life trying to deal with what is some sort of sexually transmitted disease. That not only, and actually more than sexually transmitted, because at one point the guy spits in the mouth of another guy and tells him that he has it now. So it goes beyond that, but for the most part they focus on the sexually transmitted aspect.
Well,
and
it's kind of it's largely related to like AIDS.
it is, and see that's my first question is, what in your view, what is it? What is it? What do you think it is?
Oh, well, okay. I mean, we have to further explain that what happens. This disease, it's we see that it's transmitted sexually and through the saliva.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe it's a bloodborne pathogen. I don't know, but it mutates the body. They become mutants.
Mm-hmm. Not only mutants, and most of them, now not all that they don't show, most of them become part animal. They gain an aspect of an animal, if you noticed.
Yes.
The one woman, the one girl starts shedding her skin, and like a snake or like a lizard. The one other woman grows a tail, that end up breaks off and grows back.
But that guy that has the second mouth.
Yeah, now see, that's the weird one, right? That's the one that doesn't quite fit in with my theory, but yeah, and then so as mentioned, one of the guys grows a mouth on his neck, which is really, I find one of the most interesting things about the entire story. Like that idea blows my mind as a whole, right?
And that it can talk, and it talks.
Not only does it talk, it seems to tell the truth or a certain aspect of the truth, and he doesn't have much control over what the mouse says, right?
It's almost like a second head. It reminds me of oh god, I can't remember the name of the movie, but there's this old movie, I think like maybe late 80s, where this guy starts getting a boil on his neck, and he's just like a horrible like person. He's just like very egocentric. I think he's an it's something Adventures in Advertising or something.
I think I know what you're talking about. I remember the movie now that you're mentioning it, and it grows into another head, right?
The boil gets big, and then it has a mouth.
Yeah.
And it talks in this like sort of French voice, and then the boil gets bigger and grows a mustache over the mouth, and then he's in the hospital for it, and then the boil pops up while he's in the hospital and becomes a second head, and the real head is chopped off, and the boil head,
yeah, I remember this, but I don't know what it is. Like I remember, like it sounds totally, I remember it, but I cannot tell you the slightest thing about it. But yeah, so okay, so let's continue. What is the disease? What is it?
Okay, well, metaphorically, like, I think that obviously he must have been inspired by HIV.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, he
That's-
he wrote it, he started writing it in 1995.
Yeah,
And
the only thing that I find interesting about that is that HIV really didn't become a big thing till the late 70s into the early 80s, and I saw this as more biographical from my point of view, and I was thinking it was maybe something different from the 70s. I might be wrong. I mean, but yeah, it does have quite a few similarities to AIDS and could very well be
I mean,
connected to it.
really, I mean, it could be like any, like, sort of disease that, I mean, it could be any sort of sexually transmitted disease, something that, like, alters your life and changes you into, like, I mean, it's even just, could be talking about high school. I mean,
Yep.
like, this whole, like, just being different, you know, being ostracized from, like, the main population of people.
One part at the early going that struck me. I didn't notice it when I first read it, but I noticed it this time when I reread it. The character Chris, who has the skin that comes off, the girl.
She's a very popular girl.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What her story reminded me of, what it made me think of was pregnancy. Was her getting pregnant at a young age. Because there's a part where the guy first finds the skin before I think it's before you know it's her. The guy finds the skin and he says that this skin was a girl's skin who it came off of someone who's now a woman, or he made some kind of line about that. That it reminded me of, like, you know, you become pregnant, you're no longer a girl, you know, kind of thing. And how you're ostracized because of that, especially back in the day. It's much more acceptable now, you know, but back in the day, if you got pregnant in high school, you were quite often cast out.
Oh yeah, and then like the whole your internal like perspective of yourself and your body, you become sort of like monstrous, you know. You become like just like from the get go, like first it just feels like you're gonna enact the chest buster scene from Aliens out, like, you know, you can't control your vomiting, and like, yeah, you become like it. Yeah, I could totally relate to that.
You kind of become you become the cautionary whale. I mean,
yeah, you know, I'm not really sure. Like, I mean, I feel like it's such a. I feel like it could be like a metaphor for so many things. I mean, like, yeah, pregnancy, actual STDs, you know, just things you go through.
The awkwardness of growing up, becoming an adult in general.
Yeah, drug use. I mean, like, there's a lot of. I mean, they do use drugs and smoke and like, drink, but
on that note, what I hadn't even thought of was, until just now as we're talking, I don't think that they. In the book, they do show some sex. In general, though, it's always an infected or infected people having sex. And what I'm wondering is if we use it as a metaphor, if we talk about it in the sense of that awkwardness stage in life from a young person becoming an adult, which is high school, maybe sex is that boiling point, and maybe the disease itself is nothing more than no longer being a virgin. You know, in a way. I don't know. I mean... Yeah,
well, it is. It does seem to be like the point where each of these characters' innocence is changed. There's no longer any innocence. And that's what I have to say that I was like kind of like both drawn to and like repulsed by and throughout this whole book. And I don't know if you have any images, but like I was telling you before, going over it again, there are just some images that, you know, you see when you pick up this book that you're just like, oh God, I forgot how graphic this graphic novel is, you know, and like there's just, and I mean, it's all done in black and white, you know, and yet there's
very high contrast black and white too.
Yes,
which is which is really interesting to me because of and that's not necessarily because of has anything to do directly with the story, but that's Charles Burns' style.
Let me see if you can see any of this. Like,
well, I can full screen your camera. Hold on a second. Let's do that. There's Black Hole. Let's full screen your camera. Give me 1 sec. Oops. All right, there we go. Yeah. Okay, yeah. And so this is the woman with the tail.
The Lizard Queen.
The Lizard Queen, yes.
Let's see if I'm getting it.
Which I don't know about
right
you.
There.
Yeah.
Wait. Oh, right there. That is a crotch shot.
Uh-huh.
and you can see, the hand and the other woman. Sorry.
No, you're
Just
fine.
all like, "Whoa," but
So next time, tell me the page number, and I'll pull up an image and create an image
okay.
of it, because I have this on a digital.
But yeah, I mean, it's just it's it's beautiful, but it's graphic, and there's things that just are kind of like gross, like the images of worms. There's a lot of
Hmm.
like worm
Yeah.
imagery and like serpent imagery, and just where like human beings are becoming monsters, and they're literally becoming monsters in
Hmm.
this book.
Hmm.
And I mean, like I think you could profoundly dissect this from a literature like standpoint, but just from like as a fan and everything, it's like I think that what I like about this is classically in comic books, X-Men. I'm thinking of X-Men. You
Okay.
see like this mutation where humans become superhuman. They become more than human, more powerful than a human, and like
Hmm.
they sort of exemplify what it is to be like this great human being. And that's absolutely unrealistic. But then in this, it's like they become monsters, and it shows what it is to be. It's like it's so human.
Yeah.
Isn't that weird? It's
Yeah,
so
yeah. It's one of those
gross.
deals where the more that you distort humanity, you actually see more of the real humanity in it, and it's I like that point a lot. I hadn't really necessarily had thought of it so much in that way. The I find it interesting that what I like too is that they become these quote unquote monsters. They become these mutants, these diseased beings, and some of them remain basically the same people. Some of them change and grow. I mean, yeah, they're all changing, but I mean, they're still basically just regular human beings. Is my point. Others become sick and distorted, become mean, as we see by the group. Some of the members of the group that live out in the forest.
Right. Well, there's a murderer amongst
There's
them.
a murderer who not only is a murderer, there's actually multiple murderers, and because there's Dave, who of course is the one who kills, who you find out is the killer kind of towards the end of the book. But there's also the guy who killed the guy with the mouth, hit him with the pipe, right? But he was doing
Wait, wasn't that the same?
no, that was a different guy. That was I'd have to look it up, but
Well, because the grossly
because
like
Dave
ogre
killed
kind of
him.
guy. Oh, right.
Dave
Because
killed
Dave
him.
was having him
Yep, he had him do
killed.
it. Yeah,
Yeah. But that guy was kind of like I saw him as sort of like the innocent guy,
just
like
kind
the
of a
dude from
pawn.
like the dude from Mice and Men. What was his name?
Sure.
Faulkner. Give me the dude from Mice and Men, the big guy.
Oh, I can't remember.
Well,
Who,
she's
like
no
the kind of,
good.
he's the kind of like mentally
Yeah. Yep.
Sim-
I got it.
the simple dude, and he just looks awful. He just looks like a monster. So he becomes like the scapegoat for this guy Dave, who's like this slimy creep of a guy.
Hmm. Yeah. And I find it, the thing that I find most interesting about it are the little flashbacks throughout the book where you see things like Dave. They don't really go into it in the book as much as in depth as I thought they were going to when they brought it up.
Yeah.
But his history, it was kind of glazed over a little bit, but that leaves it very open-ended and interesting to me. Because they mention him as a chess player, correct?
Yeah,
And
yeah.
that's kind of about it. That's kind of what you know about it, that he was just kind of this nerd. And so, I mean, what caused him to become this psychopath? Was it the change? Was it society's reaction to the change? Was it him being bullied as a nerd in high school? Was it him being bullied as a monster? Was it
Well,
everything
he's the
put
one who has
together?
that scene in like the McDonald's or the whatever it is, where where he spits in the guy's mouth,
Yeah,
right?
yeah. The
Yeah.
KFC, yeah.
Yeah, he's being bullied by this guy for what he is, and pulls out the gun and spits in his mouth and tells him now he's gonna be that way.
And what's interesting is that now, and this is kind of a wholesome, is that them as these monsters, these outcast society, these weak human beings in a way, have the power.
Yeah.
Because he no longer, one, he has nothing to lose anymore, because society's already trashed him. And two, he can force you to become him, essentially, right? He has the power in this scenario. So that's kind of interesting in the entire realm of it all, you know?
Right. Yeah, and I like, I think they play a lot on the fact that, like, it's such a shameful thing.
Mm-hmm.
Like, that's why it kind of made me think that he was influenced by the HIV epidemic, because people kind of, like, similarly, they looked down on everybody and they said, oh, well, it's because of your wicked ways. It's because you behaved this way, and so you deserve to be this way. You deserve to be sick and dying, or,
Yep.
And in this book, it's like, well, you behaved badly, oh, we know because you have this disease that you've had sex, and that you have become thus tainted, Yeah. And, I mean, that's just like, it's very classic, right? It's a classic story, but a weird twist, right? Like, I mean, lepers, HIV, people with, like,
well, it's ostracizing that which we don't understand, or that which we do not know, or that which is different, Yeah. And it happens in all groups, and that's just the nature of human society, right? You're most secure if you know exactly what's going on. If you don't know, that's an insecurity and therefore a weakness, right? Like,
right.
it's really problematic. It's the same thing in isolated tribes in Indonesia. Like, to them, the white man is this crazy evil ghost thing, right? Like, I actually saw this really interesting documentary about that specifically, and it was really weird just because you're so used to how the world is, and we were trained and brought up in a certain way, that when we see a group of people that just doesn't understand, and they treat this outsider they're treating him not like their own, but they're also treating him like less than human.
Yeah.
They're removing that humanity from him.
Right. Yeah, and that's a great point. They're removing the humanity. That's what's largely happening with this population in this book, is that they're no longer humans anymore. It's like their humanity is removed because they become mutated.
And
I really like that. One of the reasons I actually read this, why I was told to read this, is because I've been working on working on being the writer for this comic book called Nowhere Land. Me and my friend Adam Mariano are working on, and it's kind of like it's like similar, like this idea of like it takes place in Merced and Outwater, and the water's tainted because of the base, and we're linking it to this other lawsuit that's actually going on, and then they start mutating, and then you have this like population of mutants, but they're really like more human than the people that aren't mutated or that are left behind. So for me, when I was reading this, I was like kind of like looking for that, like what's going on with the society, and like what's going on with the people, and you kind of do see in this too, the mutants are more inherently like human, more like genuine people, I guess, with the exception of Dave. Then,
I mean, on that level, no. I mean, he's part of it. The violence, that is all part of that which is humanity. Which the human society. And so I think in a way you have to have him. That's kind of in a way what I kind of think his purpose in the entire story is without a counterpoint to the good mutants, you would say, to the normal mutants, right? Like the woman with the tail and all. Like, without him, it almost is kind of farcical, right? Like, it's almost like this... this umbrella philosophy, this structure that's above, you almost need him to bring it back down to create that reality of their humanness.
Yeah, Oh man, and I like the way it ends so much with the Lizard Queen and can't remember the guy's name. What's his
Yeah,
name?
his name is. We're both getting our books out. Fuck, I don't remember. But yeah, I know the Lizard Queen and the guy.
And the guy, the main like kind of love interest.
Yeah.
The one who's the yeah.
Who's in love with Chris at the beginning of the story.
Yeah. Well, the Lizard Queen is Eliza.
That's right.
And then Kirsten? Wait.
No, Keith. Keith.
Keith.
Yes, Keith.
Yes. The love story between the two of them is really beautiful. I like that. I like how it ends. And it's, yeah. Yeah. But I mean, yeah, I don't know. Just, I'm very fond of his style. The way he draws. I'm very fond of it.
Have you read much else by Charles Burns, or have you seen anything else?
Yeah. Well, let me show you something really quick. I haven't read any of his comic books so much, but like the first thing I ever saw by him was this.
Okay, yeah.
He illustrates for The Believer.
Yep. Which have you seen? I have the issue of The Believer, which has a giant story about Cerebus the Aardvark and Dave Sim, and it talks about it's really great. I forget what I want to say. It's issue number 4.
I don't have issue number 4.
But it's about the ending of the Cerebus storyline and why it's important to have artwork and great artists that you completely disagree with and hate. And it's actually it's a really brilliant article, and I recommend that. Look for that.
Yeah, I'm gonna look for that. If you can help me get my hands on that.
I have one. I bought it. I ordered it back issue from the McSweeney's website, I think.
Good call.
Or from Amazon or something.
I'm gonna have to
Yeah,
wrap up.
we're gonna have
You
to.
want to hear my nerd antidote before I leave?
Your nerd antidote?
Yeah.
What's that?
So Unicorn City, right? The indie film I told you.
Yeah,
to watch. Yeah. Okay. About the LARPers. Me and my friend Heather here, we went to it last night, and there was this part where one of the characters they were playing, tabletop before they went out LARPing, and he was challenging his DM because he was telling him like, you're not a good DM anymore, and I wanna take leadership, and so he's gonna have him fight this like big dragon, and all of a sudden the dragon has psionic powers because the DM has like the ability to do that all of a sudden, and so they roll a d20, and like, when the d20 hits the table and the number shows up, me and Heather are like, oh. Once in the audience were like, oh, because he rolled a 1. And we're like, oh. Yeah, that's when I was all like, oh.
That's great. All right, well, then we're going to go ahead and wrap this up. I'm going to let you go, and then I'll do a little bit of a wrap-up here. I'm not sure when we're going to do the next one yet. We'll email and figure it out.
Hey, wait a minute. We got to tell them what we're doing, right?
Oh, yeah, and see, that's what I was going to do. I didn't know if you were prepared for that. We are going to be talking about... hold on. Let me grab my copy of it.
I love how we keep running back and forth to our libraries and grabbing copies of our comic books.
We are going to be talking about one of my favorite books of the past few years. It goes along with Black Hole. Too Cool to Be Forgotten by Alex Robinson. I've read this like 4 times since I got it, and I can read it in the span of like a day because I'm like addicted to it. And I love Alex Robinson, and I'm going to actually see if I can get some insight from him on this. So that might be cool too.
Yeah.
So you got to read this because it's absolutely outstanding. It's one of the best cartoon books I should say it's one of the best cartooning books that's not Dave Sim, Jeff Smith, or Craig Thompson, who's like the god right now, right? So, apart from that, it's outstanding. So that is what we will be talking about. Go a little bit in depth in that. Hopefully, we'll be joined by our cohort, Mr. Darkness here. Hopefully, he'll meet us this time. Yeah, well, you don't get better than the Darkness, right?
No, right.
So. So that's about it. So we're just going to go ahead and wrap this up. Thanks, you guys, for checking it out. And hopefully soon we will also have a project name and email and that kind of thing to give feedback and suggestions to, and hear how you hate us and think and hear how you want to see more of Amber because she's a hot comic chick, right? So so thanks again, and we'll see you guys next time. Any last words, Amber?
No, it's been fun.
Well, fucking A then. All right, guys, we'll catch you on the flip side.
Oops.